Imagine that you are a famous painter. You've made quite a few pieces, the majority of them grossing mounds upon mounds of cash. You're rich, and very happy about it. However, you're not a snobby artist built for only the wealthiest connoisseurs. No. Your art is primarily loved by the common people, the everyman. You, yes you, are the Shakespeare of painters, and you're just about to make your next new project, Taem forte. The title is a phrase meaning "you are strong" in Portuguese. You want this painting to empower the commoners who gather far and wide to consume your art. You toil away tirelessly for months on this new piece, planning every part of its design, aesthetic, and composition so that it's as close to perfect as you can make it. This is your new masterpiece. You release this painting to immediate critical acclaim. Everyone, almost universally, loves this piece. In certain ways, its uniqueness and individuality outshine your previous work. There's something special about this painting that just captures the imaginations of the people who indulge themselves in it. As months go by, you move on. You make more paintings, you make more money, and your reputation skyrockets as one of the premier artists in your field. However, people always mention to you, here and there, how much they wish you'd return to the style of Taem forte. The piece has been seen by so many that fans are craving something new, something fresh. So you, being the crafty creator you are, make a risky and unprecedented move.
Everything on black.
Three times a year, you give the people, the commoners who have loved your work from the start, the opportunity to add their own art to the painting, directly changing the construction you worked so hard on. On one hand, it may pain you to see the world you so carefully crafted with your hands be disrupted by outside influence. But on the other hand, there's something thematically fitting about having a painting made for the everyman be continued and maintained by a community of dedicated artists and passionate fans of your work. As years passed, Taem forte changes more and more with every new edition. These editions start as almost tributes to the work the original artist did, being modeled after the work that had already been done. However, as this community-led project continues, people begin to get more daring with the drawings being plastered onto the canvas every year. One day, pushing the boundaries of the original work further than anyone thought they could go, one artist takes a Sharpie and draws a silly mustache onto one of the men in the painting. Chaos ensues. A divide immediately forms within the community surrounding Taem forte, as two factions form in response to the cartoonish facial hair that has been added to their beloved painting. One side, the Traditionalists, see the mustache as an affront to the art style that had been faithfully adhered to for years. They worry that, before long, the appearance of the painting they hold so dear will be drowned out as more and more liberties are taken with what can and can't be added to the painting. They've been entrusted with Taem forte, so they should maintain the vision of the original artist. The other side, the Progressivists, see the mustache as them evolving the style of the painting that they were given. They question why they should have to adhere to any guidelines or rules regarding their additions to the painting. They even argue that the original painter is known for pushing the boundaries of how to be an artist, so they should be able to do the same. They've been entrusted with Taem forte, so they should push what can be done with the tools they were given, regardless of the template made for them. Both sides have one thing in common. They care a lot about Team Fortress 2 is a game in a unique position. Its recent updates are almost entirely made by the community, people just like you and me. Valve, the company that develops TF2, has set up a system through the Steam Workshop where TF2 cosmetics, unusual effects, taunts, and maps can all be submitted by community members to be potentially put in an official update. This is, to my knowledge, the only reputable game currently in existence to work this way, and that's for good reason. In the case of most games, communities aren't passionate enough or talented enough to make content for the game that they play. For games that do have such a community, the governing body isn't typically willing to work with them to help add their ideas into the game. Team Fortress 2, however, is the singular exception, where the community is active, talented, and the company that publishes it is willing to implement the community's work directly into the game. That said, this unique, unprecedented situation that TF2 is built on has led to an incredibly divisive issue arising between members of the Team Fortress 2 community. This issue has caused a lot of vitriol and anger to be shot around from both sides like pipe grenades, usually resulting in very reasonable conversations about art and preservation being painted as overly destructive or useless. That's why I'm here, to try and give a measured look at both sides and let you, the viewer, come to your own conclusions regarding what you think is more correct. That's the purpose of this video, to depolarize the conversation surrounding one of TF2's biggest and most divisive topics. Without any further ado, let's get started. When it comes to additions made to Team Fortress 2, many people have the opinion that the items added to the game should adhere to the art style that was originally piloted for the game in 2007. These people, who I've dubbed Traditionalists, often state that recent cosmetics added to the game significantly damage the look, aesthetic, and even gameplay that TF2 has had since its inception. There are a variety of perspectives from people in favor of this side, but most of them boil down to two core arguments.
These cosmetics cause significant issues with team recognition.
The first and most common argument made by this side is that these cosmetics heavily hinder team recognition.
Imagine you just installed the game. What team is this?
And no one seriously thinks an item like this is appropriate for the game.
This is the idea that the sheer amount or appearance of things that can be present on a TF2 character at once make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible at times, for a person to be able to see what team the other is on. And, if a player can't recognize what team someone is on, then how are they supposed to figure out who to shoot? This is often supplemented with the idea that this cosmetic chaos can potentially make TF2 unapproachable for new players, which hampers the game's long-term appeal. Furthermore, the color palettes that inform TF2's team recognition are one of the art style's defining traits, so traditionalists see it as a significant issue that new cosmetics aren't adhering to the color palettes that were established at the game's inception. The team recognition argument is also assisted by other, more niche cases where new cosmetics can make playing certain classes much more difficult. This is because these specific cosmetics make it more complicated to locate the weak spots that classes like Sniper and Spy rely on.
These cosmetics break the pre-established aesthetic of Team Fortress 2.
The second major argument used by traditionalists is that certain new cosmetics break too far outside the realm of what should be aesthetically acceptable in Team Fortress 2.
Example. The counterfeit Billy Cock is a great hat. It's absurd, but it's not unrealistic. It doesn't look out of place, and it perfectly reflects the character of the class wearing it. This one's just a banana!
A wide variety of different hats, paints, and unusual effects are frequently cited as an affront to the game's original art style, usually due to them jumping the shark and being too wacky, oversaturated, or cartoonish. This is usually a statement made on the foundation of preservation, or the idea that the unique, niche, and very stylish art style that TF2 has always had shouldn't be hindered by community cosmetics that don't fit that special aesthetic. Occasionally, this is also supplemented with the statement that TF2 takes place in the late 60s to early 70s, and therefore shouldn't feature cosmetics that contain items that don't fit that time period. However, these two arguments don't go without a lot of pushback. This issue is one that has been around for a very long time, so there's plenty of counter-arguments that are commonly made by the other side of the debate. People who disagree with the traditionalists usually take the position that TF2's art style being preserved isn't particularly important. These people, who I'll refer to as progressivists, often cite a myriad of different counters toward the arguments being made by traditionalists.
Well, it doesn't bother me.
One of the most common statements in response to people's complaints is that these issues simply don't bother them. This frequently comes up in reference to team recognition, where responders will often cite anecdotally that they've always been able to figure out what team a merc is on regardless of their cosmetics. This is also usually followed with a blanket statement that the issue doesn't matter all that much, since it doesn't really frustrate the individual making said blanket statement.
Just shoot the enemy to figure out whose team they're on.
Another common response regarding the team recognition argument specifically is that you can just shoot the enemy to figure out if they're on your team or not. Though this doesn't really directly address the complaints of traditionalists, it's more of a solution for those who struggle to figure out what team the other players are on. However, it is often stated as a dismissal of the team argument altogether, hence why I felt it was worth mentioning.
TF2 has always been cartoonish and goofy.
When traditionalists criticize new cosmetics for jumping the shark, the most common response is that Well, TF2 has always been wacky and silly. This can be used to justify the inclusion of basically any cosmetic in the game, and is often followed by the person saying that a given cosmetic's inclusion doesn't bother them personally.
TF2's art style was already tarnished by Valve themselves.
The final common response that progressivists give to traditionalists is that the items Valve themselves created or implemented into TF2 already contradict the established art style.
A couple of the items we've shipped in the past have been as far away from the TS art style as we want to go.
And those items would be...
I think the dangerous glasses would probably be out there. I think those are probably one of the most egregious things.
If a traditionalist is arguing the game should be kept quote-unquote as Valve intended, then this response counters that idea by citing specific times where Valve added cosmetics that directly contradicted TF2's art style. This is usually followed by the statement that modern-day workshoppers are operating within a framework that Valve already made for them years ago with these more out-there cosmetics. These are the common arguments made by both sides. Which ones you find more valid is up to you. But I wanted to give my thoughts on the discussion in more detail since I find the divide present between the two groups to be fascinating. I understand the perspectives of both traditionalists and progressivists. The former care deeply about ensuring that a game they love doesn't get tarnished in any significant way, especially when said tarnishing negatively affects the gameplay. On the other hand, progressivists often feel like the game has been handed to the community, and what the community does to it is the community's business. Just because TF2 is changing doesn't mean it's changing for the worse. Right? Personally, I lean more toward being a traditionalist than a progressivist. My personal values mean that I care tremendously about preserving the art style, which I consider to be one of a kind and timeless, and I don't want to see it damaged by outside influence. That doesn't mean I don't want new cosmetics to be added, like some traditionalists suggest, but it simply means that I want the look of said cosmetics to reflect the appearance of the game they're being made for. The recent Smithsmith 2023 cosmetic case is a perfect encapsulation of what I'd like to see more of in the game. Every single item here is an absolute banger in my eyes, and if we get cosmetics of this quality and nature for the rest of time, I'd be as happy as I could be. That aside, I want to encourage people to keep talking about this issue, as well as all of the other ones that have and will be discussed in the future. People naturally have an aversion to conflict, and I understand the online landscape can feel like a minefield at times. However, assuming that the parties discussing these issues are willing to hear each other out, I think that the added knowledge and understanding that can come from talking about disagreements can be really helpful. Often when I discuss contentious topics like this with players, other TF-tubers, or other viewers in my comments section, I learn new things about TF2 that I never would have known otherwise. It's allowed me to hear a variety of different opinions and viewpoints, which in turn allows me to be more knowledgeable about Team Fortress 2 as a whole. To me, that's only a good thing. I don't want to live in an echo chamber, or only hear one side of the story. So seeking out opposing opinions and having discussions about those opinions allows me to better understand the topics and issues at hand. And that's pretty important for this crazy thing that I call my job. Of course, be civil, but keep discussing and debating. If you have an argument that I didn't include for either side, or just want to give who you think made more sense, I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. Thank you all for listening to my think piece, and I hope you all stay lucid. Bye-bye.